Over the years, we've seen athletes display their clutch gene time after time. But not only does this particular player have that it factor clutch gene in his game, what really stands out about him is his character. We're talking about a player who has always seemed to impact every situation he's been in a positive way. But he has dealt with this share of adversity ever since a young age, but always had it in him to handle it in the best way possible. This is the Jalen Hurts story. Jalen Hurts was born on August 7, 1998 in Houston, Texas. But growing up, just as a child, Jalen gravitated towards the game of football. And by the age of 6, he was going to summer workouts with his older brother at Channelview High School, where his older brother played. Jalen did all the workouts and the agility drills that the older kids did, which did really allow him to dominate when he played against his own age group. He went on to attend Channelview High School, and this is where he was coached by his father throughout his whole entire high school career. And ever since a young age, his dad saw something in him and pushed him to the max every day and showed no favoritism towards him. He was a second team all-district selection as a sophomore and was named to the District 21 6A overall MVP as a junior. But as his senior year approached, he really became unstoppable while showing a superb amount of leadership and poise. He had over 2,000 yards passing, 1,000 rushing, with over 50 combined touchdowns. He solidified himself on becoming a 4-star recruit and was easily one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in his class. But not only that, he managed to be able to squat 500 pounds while still being in high school. And from the outside looking in, it was almost as if it was nothing he couldn't do. And with a lot of schools across the country having interest in Jalen, he decided to graduate high school early and enrolled into Alabama at just the age of 17 years old. And during his freshman season, when it came to being an immediate impact, the odds were stacked against Hurts. Nick Saban had never started a freshman quarterback under center. Even though he wasn't the best at throwing just yet, the OC Lane Kiffin seen a whole lot in him and knew that Jalen could possibly be the one to lead this team and furthermore be a future first-round pick. Jalen continued working and continued to show what type of player he could become. And somehow, Nick Saban was persuaded and bought in to Jalen getting a shot. But on his very first game versus USC, on his first snap, he would actually fumble. And truthfully, he just needed to get the ball rolling. Because in that same game, he went on to throw 2 touchdown passes and ran for 2 in a 52-6 win. And by now, Saban was convinced and knew that we found our guy. And throughout his freshman season, he would show Nick Saban how composed and how well-rounded of an individual he was. Whether if that was knowing some plays that Nick Saban didn't expect him to know, or if it was him always staying level-headed and keeping his team together. While doing this all at being just a freshman, he threw for 2,780 yards and 23 touchdowns. And his completion percentage was 62.8%, while being able to finish his freshman season with a quarterback rating of 139.1. He rushed for a total of 954 yards and a total of 13 touchdowns. He was the first player in Alabama history to pass for 300 yards and rush for 100 yards in the same game. He would go on to lead his team past the Florida State Gators to win the SEC championship game in 2016 and was named SEC Offensive Player of the Year as a freshman. So with people speculating if he could take his game to the next level during his sophomore season, he did pass for less yards and less touchdowns, but he was just much more sharp. With only 1 interception with 17 touchdowns, he was still able to manage over 2,000 passing yards. He also did his thing in the rushing game with over 808. He really was as versatile as it got. So after he put up a pretty astonishing regular season, things wouldn't be so welcoming later on in the playoffs. Now, he was named MVP of the Sugar Bowl versus Clemson as Alabama was the 4th seed, but versus Georgia in the national championship game, Jalen struggled and wasn't able to throw the ball effectively. And at halftime, Saban decided to bench Hurts and took a different route and trusted his freshman. But Jalen was Tua's biggest supporter and showed an immaculate amount of great character even when things weren't going his way. Tua simply dominated the Georgia defense, picking them apart left and right. He threw a 41-yard touchdown pass to beat the Bulldogs 26-23, and in the end, you could just tell Jalen was genuinely happy for Tua and had 110% trust in what Nick Saban was doing.
Your reaction when you found out Tua was going to start the second half, honestly?
He was going to step in and do his thing. You know, we have a lot of guys in the QB room that play really well, and he stepped in and did his thing.
It was just astonishing to see how he explained to Tua, telling him to ball and to play your game, which went to show on how unselfish Jalen was. So with a lot of people thinking that Hurts would transfer for his next season, he knew that his ties ran deep at Alabama, and he knew that the hard work he was putting in would not fail him. Hurts realized that he was going to have to trust the process. Tua was the starter for the next season, while Jalen didn't see a whole lot of field time, leaving him the backup for the 2018 season. But something would change, because while versus Georgia in the SEC championship, the same team Hurts lost a position to was the same team that he regained the starting position back, because while Tua went down with a sprained ankle, Hurts really took action, throwing dots left and right, and threw a clutch touchdown pass to tie the score, followed by him rushing in for a touchdown, which led to them winning the game, but unfortunately ended up losing to Clemson in the national championship. He made the decision to transfer to Oklahoma to finish out his senior season. On January 16, 2019, he knew that he had to prove a lot more. And he also had a lot on his shoulders, but he just never lacked confidence in himself. And it showed. He would have over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. As a whole, everything just seemed to click more with Jalen, as he looked more comfortable and seemed to have more trust in his receivers more while being in the pocket. I mean, his stat line showed where he was one of the best quarterbacks at that time. And just like before, many people were skeptical and weren't sure how his game would transfer to the NFL due to his struggles in the big games. So after finishing second in Heisman Trophy voting behind Joe Burrow, he would enter the 2020 NFL Draft and would go 53rd to the Philadelphia Eagles in the second round and was named the third string quarterback. But he was eventually named the second string QB by week 2. But in his very first game starting, he really turned heads with this 150 yards passing and 100 rushing, as he led the Eagles to their first win in 5 weeks against New Orleans. And by now, it just seemed as though that the team as a whole just competed better with Hurts as the starting QB. Throughout his rookie year, you saw flashes of how great he really could be in the near future. And although they didn't win a lot of games, his aura and demeanor was something that really sparked up the team in a positive way, because even teammates like Brandon Graham and Jalen Reagor both commented on how great of a leader he was, along with his outstanding work ethic. Now, during his second year, he was able to pass for over 3,100 yards and 16 touchdowns, turning heads and once again proving his doubters wrong. It really went on to show that he was still him, and even earned himself to be a Pro Bowl alternate. Now, going into the 2022 season, in just their first couple of games, it's pretty safe to say that Hurts has been exceeding all expectations that were threw upon his name coming into this season, especially after acquiring some very vital pieces. He's really led by example, especially with him entering this season and being able to improve on making the right reads, and he's even managed to look way more sharp when it came to his pass accuracy. Jalen Hurts stayed on track through all types of obstacles, from his name getting completely tarnished in the media to losing the starting position in college. He was always able to just remain humble and stayed confident in himself, because he knew deep down what morals he stood for, and that's why he's always going to be referred to as a true warrior.
I put it in God's hand. put it in God's hands. He handled it for me, and here we are.
And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Jalen Hurts story.